issues that I study, and I'm happy. I always learn when I go out into communities, because research and data will tell you some things, but it's the real stories from individuals that really tell you what's happening on the ground. To give you a little background on what's happening with immigration enforcement, and give you more detail about how immigration enforcement really works on the ground. And then we'll talk a little bit about the political implications of it. Okay, so we have about 11 million undocumented people living in this country. That's not an insignificant number. There's perception that everybody who's undocumented crossed the border. That's not true. About 40% are visa overstayers, so they entered lawfully but then overstayed visa. What we have right now are declining apprehensions at the border. There's many fewer people being apprehended by Border Patrol. And actually, what scholars tell us that we have net zero migration from Mexico. So we have, in terms of the number of people coming in and going out, it's zero. So it isn't, you hear in Arizona or Alabama or larger states that are passing anti-immigrant laws, we are having an invasion. Well, there's no invasion. There's no data to show that there's an invasion. So in terms of the crimes that the federal government is prosecuting right now, this is not a state and local government, this is the federal government. The biggest crime right now is felony re-entry. It's an immigration crime, which is you re-entered after being deported. So immigration crimes are what the federal government is spending its money on prosecuting. It's 1325, which is a misdemeanor entry, and 1326 are 90% of the immigration prosecutions that are happening. There's been a dramatic rise in deportations. Yeah. So under the Obama administration, 1 million people have been deported. You can see over time that it's many more in the past 3 years than before. So the increase in deportation started under President Bush, but it just keeps going up under this current administration. The other thing is that a lot of people don't realize that green card holders have been deported. From 1996 to 2006, 180,000 green card holders were deported. So there is no such thing as being a lawful permanent resident. If you get convicted of, there's a broad basket of crimes, they could even include misdemeanors, you are deportable. And the government is going to find you and deport you. That's a lot of what they're using their money for. Okay, so let me go on to the next one. Okay. So now on to how the government finds people and what are these enforcement programs that they're using. I'm not going to talk about Border Patrol, I'm going to talk about what's happening in the interior of the country. So there's 3 programs, and the first one you might have heard about is called 287G. And what 287G is, it's not the government going into communities and saying, do you want to do immigration enforcement? It's the other way around. It's usually a local sheriff or police chief who goes to the government and says, I'm really interested in doing immigration enforcement, so how do I do that? And what they have is this mechanism where they train these individuals and deputize them as federal law enforcement, so that they can, when they're making a traffic stop, normally, in most places, police don't ask you your immigration status during a traffic stop. That's not their function. But if you're a 287G officer, you are allowed to do that. Now, the thing is, this was publicized in a major way. There are really only about 70 agreements in the country. And the Obama administration has said they're going to roll back this program. And I'll explain to you why. Because they actually don't think they need it anymore because they have to do it. Okay, so the criminal alien program is a program that very few people have heard about, but it's all over the country and it's under the radar. And what it is immigration officers who visit jails on a regular basis. Some of them are stationed at jails. These are not, it's not prisons, it's like county, local jails. And they look at the intake sheets, and they ask the officers, who did you bring in today? Is anybody, so they look at anybody who's foreign born, and they investigate their immigration status. We don't know how this program works. We don't know which jails these officers go to, but we do know that they're all over the country, and they work hand in hand with secure communities. And how they work, and do you want to go on to? So how secure communities works is, if you're arrested, and sometimes this has happened to domestic violence victims. Let's say police goes into a domestic violence situation, they don't know who's the perpetrator, who's the victim, they arrest both husband and wife. They bring them in, they fingerprint both people. Those fingerprints are normally sent to the FBI. And no one really argues with that, because the FBI has a list, a terror watch list, did you commit a major offense in some other country or another state? So that's the normal procedure. Now, the FBI sends those fingerprints to the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of Homeland Security is checking its immigration data. So anybody who ever got a visa, anybody who's ever been naturalized, I mean, it's not just database, they don't have a database of undocumented people, they have a database of somebody who came in contact with the federal government. Now, what we do know is that even undocumented people who never had any contact with the federal government are getting caught up in secure communities. How does that happen? Because you think, you're not in the database. Your fingerprints are taken, there's no hit on you. Well, how it happens is, you most likely told the people that you were foreign-born. If you're foreign-born and you're not in the database, they think, oh, they suspect potentially that you're undocumented. They then call the CAP officer. Because secure communities, what the government will tell you, it's purely technology. All we're doing is checking fingerprints. We're not actually doing anything else. So they call the CAP officer. The CAP officer comes to the jail, interviews you. The vast majority, and this is a problem for a lot of lawyers, I mean, from my data, a vast majority of people will immediately admit that they're undocumented. So then they have identified. So that is, that's one of the things that's how secure communities and CAP is working together. And this is secure communities right now. The green is where it's active. So it's been active in all of California. By 2013, it's going to be in every single jail in the country. So anybody who's arrested and brought into jail will have an immigration check. So it's a radical, it's a radical program. It's something that's actually going to change, how immigration enforcement, and it is currently changing how immigration enforcement is being done in the country. Yeah, this is the funding to just mainly secure communities. This is not the funding for detention. This is not the funding for deportation. We spend on average about $4 billion a year on just immigration enforcement. If you add all the detention and deportation and all that, this is $800 million right now that's being spent on implementing this program. Okay, so what's the point of the program? I mean, why do we need this? Well, as what was first told to Congress when they asked for this money was, we need to go after the worst of the worst. We want to get the rapists and murderers and really, it's hard to argue against that. Hard to argue against going after the worst of the worst. But what you actually see, I mean, the government has put out data on who is being deported under this program. The vast majority of people are low-level offenders or non-offenders. And so what you have, I mean, I have a sample data set, which I haven't published these results, but like, there's not one person who's a national security risk, there's not one rapist, there's not one murderer, there's not, so what you have is a program that was supposed to be really narrowly targeted, but it's going after everybody. And once you're in this system, it's very hard to get through the process. And some of the research I've done shows that. The other thing was, when they first started this program, they made it sound like it was voluntary. Oh, we're going to sign this agreement with your state, and we're going to roll you in, and then all of a sudden you had places like New York and Massachusetts, and even counties in California like, wait, we don't want to be part of secure communities. How do we not be a part of this? And, oh, go talk to your governor. Oh, talk to the FBI. Oh, talk. And then literally this process has been going on for 2 years now. And just at the end of last year, they announced, oh, you know what, we're sorry. It's actually not voluntary, it's mandatory. And it's an agreement between Homeland Security, the FBI, and the rest of you just have to deal with it. And why did, yeah.
I'd like to know who makes those decisions, whether it's voluntary or mandatory.
So it was lawyers at the Department of Homeland Security who, it was officials at the Department of Homeland
So
Security.
this is outside Congress, there's no law.
There's no law. So secure communities is not a law. There's never been a law passed by Congress that says you have to have secure communities. What Congress has done is given money for interior enforcement to go after criminal aliens. Now, how the government wants to go after, quote, criminal aliens, and who are criminal aliens, is something that the administration has a lot of discretion over.
Do the counties get money for
No, they don't get funded for secure communities. What they have to do is, well, first of all, there's a lot of issues. Some law enforcement have seen that once they start sending people to immigration authorities, there's a loss of trust in those communities. Because, people don't want to go tell the sheriff if they've witnessed a crime. If they know that there's any risk at all, that if they show up at that police station, that they're going to be deported. And in their mind, it's not the federal government that's deporting these people, it's the local sheriff. Because the check happens at the local jail. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of fear and also distrust. It would be very helpful for us to have more scholarship on it because the government doesn't want to believe it. Their line is, secure community prevents racial profiling because everybody who comes to the jail is checked. And they don't actually think about, how do people get to the jail? It's not even in the criminal code. It's a term made up by immigration, congressmen who wanted to limit immigration. And I was telling you all these green card holders who've been deported. So aggravated felons is a broad immigration category. It could even include people who've been convicted of minor misdemeanors. So you had a case that went to the Supreme Court recently where this guy had 2 convictions. One was for having a Xanax pill without a prescription. One Xanax pill without a prescription. He was in Texas State Prison for 8 days. Another was for having a marijuana joint. And he was there for 2 weeks. So those were his 2 convictions, and he was a green card holder. And the federal government said, that's an aggravated felony. Those 2 convictions together are aggravated felons. So when you say the worst of the worst are aggravated felons, what does that mean? It is a huge category. Some are serious offenses, but then you have a whole host of offenses that most normal, common sense people would not consider serious offenses. So the data changes because definitions are changing. All of a sudden I can say we have many more level 1 offenders. Oh, wait, how did that number change? Oh, because we changed the definition. So really when you read about this stuff and you read about numbers, I encourage you to dig a little deeper to see what the terminology really means. And then I will talk a little bit more about detainers, but what a detainer is, so the way the security community works is if ICE determines that they want you, they think you're deportable, they'll send a note to the local police. It's called a detainer. It says, please hold this person for up to 48 hours because we want, after you're done with the criminal processing, because we want them. Now, this is a request. This is a request. We request that you hold this person. So one of the things that's in play right now is there are advocates in various communities saying, you know what? They're saying to their local police, you don't have to honor this request. If you determine that this person is not a serious criminal and you don't want to send them to immigration authorities, think about it. Use your discretion. You have that discretion. So this is one of the issues that's in play, and I'll talk about a little bit more later on when I talk about the Trust Act, which is a California bill. So I'm going to just give you a little quick, you can go to the next slide. We were very fortunate. We have these advocacy groups who sued the federal government, and they said, we want to know who you're deporting through secure communities. We really want to have a sense. You say you're deporting all these serious offenders. And they brought us the data at Berkeley, and we analyzed it. And so we had a sample of people, a national sample. And these are some of our findings. So 1.6% of the people who were arrested and at some point apprehended by immigration authorities were actually U.S. citizens. And so you're like, wait, aren't U.S. citizens not deportable? Why are immigration authorities arresting those people? It's because databases are flawed. Information is flawed. And what happens is, if you go to an immigration court and you're being placed in deportation proceedings, the first issue is, are you an alien? Are you citizen, or are you an, quote, an alien? The burden is on the government. The burden is on the government to show that you are an alien. It's not on you to say, I belong here. It's on them to say, this person is not 84 or whatever, doesn't have, has never been naturalized. But when you're in jail and immigration has put a detainer on you and told the local police, hold this person, and let's say you get arrested for a minor offense. There was a case in LA where a guy went to Sears with his family, his kid took a perfume bottle, Sears wanted to prosecute him. I mean, he paid $400 for items, and they prosecuted him for having a perfume bottle. He's in LA County Jail. It's one of those minor offenses that the judge would most likely have let him off with a fine. But he had an immigration hold. And he kept telling people, but I'm a U.S. citizen. And they said, oh, sorry. We don't believe you. ICE has told us that you're not. So you're just going to sit here in jail. So he cooled his heels in jail for 4 days when he would have been out of there. And it's because ICE had a detainer. And, ICE will say to you, we didn't deport him. But, as we all know, that's a violation of due process and his civil rights. And this is happening to many people, and it's a lot of people. He would let me know he had an accent because he had spent a lot of his childhood abroad. And it's happening. Most of the people I've encountered who it's happening to are Latinos. A lot of them are native born. They were born in the United States. Anyway, so this is very, very problematic. Yeah.
The percentages on the screen represent, like, for U.S. citizens, 1.6%, but what number? 180,000?
So we estimate, of our samples, our sample was smaller than that. It was a representative sample. It was 1.6 of about 350, but we extrapolated it to everybody who has been apprehended through secure communities, and we think it's been about, we estimate it's around 3,600 U.S. citizens have been impacted by secure communities. And so what we don't know is how long they sat in jail because of the detainer. We don't know whether ICE questioned them and for how long. You know, we don't know. What we hear are the stories that the journalists have been uncovering, which is that it appears on the whole that people end up spending, anywhere, could be sometimes a few weeks, sometimes more, in jail because they then have to go get documentation, to show that they're U.S. citizens. And we're not a country, unlike Europe, and if you're in Europe, you need a national ID. The police can question you as to, your status. But we're not that country. That's why people come to the U.S. You can walk down the street minding your own business and nobody asks you for papers. But we're really going in that direction here with secure communities. And that's something for all of us to be aware of. The other thing we found that 39% of the people who were put through secure communities had either a U.S. citizen spouse or child. I mean, these are families. The vast majority of people who are being deported or placed in deportation were men. And so you're reporting breadwinners here. And they have U.S. citizen family members. We also found an overrepresentation of Latinos in our sample. So Latinos are a big part of the immigrant population, and we even compared, so they're about 80% of the unauthorized population in this country, but they were 93% of our data. So, and there are people from Europe who are undocumented, there are people from Korea who are undocumented. None of those people showed up in our data. Only half the people actually end up going to court. Because our system has been set up to kind of railroad people through, a lot of people are either pressured or sign orders saying, okay, it's this self-deportation. Because a lot of these folks, especially the ones who are low-level offenders, they've never been in prison. It's scary for them. And immigration detention is not that much worse, not that much different than criminal detention, as you guys have heard. So they want to get out of there. They'll sign whatever. Very low rates of representation. So normally, in general, we have low rates of representation in our immigration system, but on the whole, about 40% of immigrants are represented when they're in immigration court. Everybody who's put through secure communities, only 24% had a lawyer at any given time. It doesn't mean that they had a lawyer throughout their case. At some point they had a lawyer. That's really low. And only 2% actually won their case. Out of the ones who won their cases, 2/3 of them had a lawyer. So having a lawyer makes a huge difference. Our system is so complex. And it's not something that just your average person can navigate. I work on immigration policy, and I'm fearful of giving immigration advice, because I don't go to court. So, if I'm afraid of this, and I'm a lawyer, you can just imagine how it is for the average person. And then, and the majority are in detention. So this is something that an analysis we did. So I think I explained to you they have level 1, 2, and 3 offenders. Like 1 is the most serious, 3 is the least, and then they had some people who didn't even have a secure communities offense. And what we wanted to see is, they say, we're going to start using discretion in detention, in that we're only going to detain people who are more serious, who are more a threat to the community. So we said, let's look at who was put into detention. And the detention rates are basically the same, if not more, for the lower level offenders. And so there's no discretion being used in detention. The level 2, the level 3, everybody's being detained. Okay. And this is just a chart showing the representation rates.
So what we recommended was that the government put in safeguards to protect, if they're going to continue with secure communities. And our first, in the end, we said they should suspend it, at least try and fix some of the problems within the system. And I don't know politically how possible that is, but some of the other recommendations we had were safeguards to protect U.S. citizens, and now I think they are supposed to be putting in some hotline so that if you claim to be a U.S. citizen, you can get, someone will investigate their case. And we urge them to investigate racial profiling. There's been a lot of anecdotal evidence. And then implement guidelines on the criteria for detention. I mean, if you say you're using discretion, then, explain to us what are the guidelines? What is the discretion that you're using and how are you using it? And then access to counsel, which I actually think is one of the biggest things right now. It's like, if you can get a lawyer, it's going to change, your situation. Okay. No, there's no, so this is an interesting thing. Yeah. Well, immigration attorneys are expensive. There are sometimes none in the places where they have detention centers. Detention centers are often like, you're arrested, in Merced, but then you're sent to maybe Yuba City or maybe Texas. Took 24 hours, you could be in Louisiana. So not only are immigration attorneys expensive, but the way that they move you around, you're away from all your, support system. So the one thing that people are talking about is that when you're in your criminal case, depending on the level of your case, you might have a criminal lawyer. And what a lot of people do is they plead their criminal case. So one thing is to maybe say, okay, I'm not going to plead to, I'm going to go through a trial, I'm going to drag out that criminal case so that at some point I can, use that time to get an immigration attorney. And your criminal lawyer actually these days is supposed to advise you to some extent about your immigration case. But it's, right now,
There's no movement for public defenders to assign these people.
there's no movement for public defenders to assign these people. The government doesn't want to pay for it. It makes a lot of scholars have argued for it. I've argued for it because it's basically like, it's the same as being in jail. It's like the immigration system is parallel to the criminal system. But what they say is, what the Supreme Court has said in the past is that deportation is not a punishment. So you're not allowed to have a lawyer because you're not really being punished. Okay, so just quickly, some of the ways that folks are dealing with enforcement. There's a Trust Act in California, and what that does is, what that says, Amiano has introduced it, it's about detainers. And it's saying, we will only honor detainers. If the federal government tells us to hold people and send them, hold people for immigration authorities, we will only honor that if it's a serious or violent criminal offense. And so that's pending in the legislature right now. I think the Senate is going to have a hearing on it and a vote on it in June, maybe? Yeah. Some organizers and advocates have started engaging with their local law enforcement. So in Cook County, Santa Clara County, Cook County in Illinois, Santa Clara County in California, you have advocates who've gone to the local sheriffs and city council and said, look, we really want you to use this discretion, even whether the Trust Act passes or not. We really think this is important for you to think about the impact on communities and your local communities. So there are people who are engaging in local law enforcement. And then on a bigger level, now with the elections coming up, you have many more people. I was just at a forum where somebody from Naleo National Association of Latino Elected Officials spoke. There's bigger campaigns for naturalization because there are about 24 million Latinos in this country who are eligible to vote, but only 12 million who actually are registered to vote. So you got a lot of people who can register to vote and make an impact in their local communities. And you even have, there's a campaign by Dreamers that's saying, I can't vote, but you need to vote for me. So there's a lot of, political engagement. It's not necessarily around immigration enforcement, but it's about having a voice in the political process where you can say, you know what, I don't know if I really want to be spending $4 or $5 billion on immigration enforcement in this country. Maybe we should have some other priorities. So that's a lot of what's happening. I think that's it. All right. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What is, if a community decides not to support secure communities, what is the, it's mandatory but not required by law, what would be the impact? Is it just monetary, or is there other impact that would force them to obey,
No, so here's the thing. If as a community you decide it's one thing, but you have to have your law enforcement decide it, because the detainer comes to them. So if your law enforcement is on board, they don't have any ramifications as far as I know. They don't get rewarded financially for doing secure communities. In fact, a lot of people argue that they pay a big price because, like this guy who was held in jail on this stealing charge was, LA County paid for 4 days of him being in jail. But normally he would have been out in a few hours. So people argue that, communities are actually paying the price for secure communities. The problem you have is one of rhetoric. So what ICE is saying to a lot of these sheriffs is, you know what? What if you release the next Axon? It's on you, it's not on us. So yeah, this person has never committed a crime before in their life, and they go to church, and they have 2 kids, and you take that risk. So that's the problem that you're encountering right now.
I'm not sure if this came from information that you guys received or elsewhere, but I saw that Merced County was number 3 in the nation for the highest rate of detaining non-criminals. So 60% or something like that.
Wow.
Or just simply not. Yeah, and I was just wondering if there's other ways to go about finding out more about our specific community, about what the numbers are, who's actually.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that offline, show you some of that. So there's this, if you do, it's a big name, but it's Secure Communities Interoperability. Interoperability, O-P-E-R ability, interoperability data. That is by county. So there's some information there about, but it's not, so what they've started now calling non-criminals are fugitives. Because if you have some immigration issue where you haven't, being undocumented in this country is not a crime. But what they have is they have information on people who have immigration problems. And instead of calling them non-criminals, which is what they are, they have civil immigration problems. They have all these other names for them. So I can help you decipher that, but sometimes they're called fugitives if they didn't show up for an immigration court date. So there's that data. I'm trying to think of who else. The ACLU of Northern California has some data. I don't know if they've made it public yet on people who are being arrested in California. I don't know which jurisdiction. I'm going to try and help you get that. Yeah.
How do you distinguish them from all this stuff with the drug dealers and cartels and the information that's coming from people that are, just regular people without documentation. I mean, how much of this is supposed to be taken?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's interesting is when you look at the data, like the serious hardcore criminals are probably at, in our data, they're probably at the most like less than 15%. Like, and even that's up for debate as to how many of those people are serious. You know, the drug cartels, those are really targeted investigations. Those are not people you just pick up driving down the freeway, driving without a license. Those are, and so what you do have, and you do have people getting caught up in drugs, but those, what we hear now is because a border has become so militarized and it's so hard to cross, almost everybody goes to a coyote. And so if you're going to, those coyotes are more and more involved with the drug traffickers. So even if you are, a undocumented immigrant and trying to just come back to your family here, sometimes they force you to carry drugs. So many people are forced as part of the process of crossing the border to be a mule. So you're not like a cartel leader. But if you want to get across and, you're going to be, that's part of what you have to do. So, I'm not saying that that's okay or not, I'm just saying that you're not targeting the serious criminals who are running those gangs. You're targeting low-level functionaries.
And you told me I got pissed off because undocumented people were found innocent in a criminal manner, and then the judge would come back, oh, by the way, there's a detaining you for immigration, we're going to have to hold you.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how do they get that information, the judges?
Oh, because, so this is the thing I wanted to emphasize. When you get arrested, those fingerprints are taken immediately. It's not at your point of conviction. Okay? So you're brought in the jail and immediately that information is sent to immigration. They don't wait to see, are you a criminal? Did you commit this crime? And this is what the Trust Act is saying is, it's only a point upon conviction. Once you're convicted of a serious offense, then we'll consider sending you to immigration. So the judges took that into
I recall hearing about the DREAM Act in high school. Didn't really look into it much because, as it is, when things aren't directly related to you, you kind of, you don't feel the need to look up on it. But I'm glad that as I've grown older, you definitely feel the calling. You definitely feel more. You just gain this social awareness, and you know that it's your duty, your responsibility to help people as much as you can. So this piece, I hope you guys enjoy it. I heard that your dreams came true. Guess it gave you things I couldn't give to you. I hate to turn up out of the blue uninvited, but I couldn't stay away, I couldn't fight it. I hope you see my face and that you'll be reminded that for me it isn't over. Never mind, I'll fight for someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you too. Would forget you since you're mine. I remember you say sometimes it takes this long, but it's worth it in the end. How do you tell a child no? You knew from the day your child was conceived that your dreams for her were as promising as the land that promised you opportunities. Brought her up on the idea that in this life there is justice for all. She learned how to bleed the red, white, and blue, was conditioned to think within the borders of her own pursuit of happiness. But happiness for other boys and girls like her doesn't come equipped with the yellow brick road all the way to that Emerald City. Cut her box short, but painted her beautiful sceneries. She envisioned different scenarios of her life with her in college. I guess for some, the grass really is greener on the other side. So how do you tell your child no? that she isn't the same as her other friends in school? How do you tell her no that she fought 18 years too short of attaining the status needed to fund her education? No one except for her father and mother ever stopped to have a dream for her. Sent her to sleep on dreams because she knows that without equality and documents, she walks around in a nightmare. America, you painted so many beautiful pictures of yourself, always absent of your detailed description. You aren't an easy pill to swallow, yet you are the prescription selling more than drugs. Everyone is hooked on you. You give an incentive to newcomers so they leave the comfort of their homes to seek better futures for their children. Everyone is a dreamer in this country. There is no equal share of this liberty when you make it this difficult to grasp. Please, don't make more parents tell their children no. No, you aren't a citizen. No, you can't do that. No, it is impossible. No, your papers have not been processed. No, mija, not now. School can wait. No, we don't have the money for your schooling. No, no, no. Well, no needs to end today. We need a call of action, and the action is an act on these dreams we see bringing in brighter futures. If this is America's today, it will be America's tomorrow. It is our choice to change the course that has shaped our path. Action is progression. Dream, act, so students can continue to act on their dreams.
My name is Ismael Lara. I'm a senior at UC Merced. My major is Spanish literature. 2 minors, one in U.S. history, one in Chicano studies. I'm one of the co-founding students of the Chicano minor at University of California, Merced. I think that for me, I feel very humbled and proud and happy, full of joy that so many people are here today to learn about the DREAM Act and trying to be or come up with ideas. We need ideas. Sometimes we don't need people to just tell us, hey, you shouldn't belong here. I'm like, hey, give me an idea. You know, help us out. Let's create intersections and parallels between these ideas to form a better community. This following poem I wrote for one of my literature classes. We were reading Frederick Douglass, Little Sojourner Truth, some Dunbar, and this is what came up. I was a slave, both in the mind and the physical, treated less than animals, the status quo, the divine, derived from the right of God, was the image of man. So man, I wanted to become. I wanted a right to education, the right to own land, the God-given Christian right to be free, like Moses did his people, fleeing Egypt and splitting the Red Sea. But as I broke the chains of enslavement and defied the master, I did not look back to set my woman free. I felt the power and the dominance and enjoyed it because this is what a man does, period. Through literature, I've grown as a human being, to see things from a human perspective, to know that there's a difference between seeking equal man rights or Sojourner Truth's famous speech essay on Ain't I a Woman. They progressed for what they could in a time period that they could. But I challenge everyone to go beyond that, not just to seek equality as a man or equality as a woman, because it's limited, it's restricted. We need to seek equality as a human being. We talked about stories today, stories and the power of the voice. The story tells the story is how we get to know people, what they've been through, the circumstances that they've overcame. How did they triumph over these circumstances? And if they didn't, they become a tale of caution through stories. And the voice. I'm going to paraphrase a quote. If anybody knows who wrote it, please let me know. Something like this. The quote says, the voice. If they could take away every single right that I possess in my right, My voice is what I will keep. Because with my voice, I can win everything back. So I'm going to share a poem that I wrote. It's based on my history, my background, my family. So you guys get to know a little bit of who I am before I get into the poem that I wrote for today. It's called Open Your Heart. She said, I'm sorry. I can't help you with your homework apps today for many reasons. The primary being, I don't have a proper education. I only passed the second grade. Second, I don't speak English. When I first got to El Norte, I made burritos and washed dishes in the Mission District. I was forced to quit school because we were poor. It didn't bring home the pesos. So I was mandated to be the nanny for my nephews. I never had dolls, couldn't afford them, so I molded my own. Out of mud, I pretended I was sculpting. My circumstances could never break my spirit, so I shined with a smile. I was grateful I was alive. My smile shined bright because in my mind, I thought of reaching the stars. So on a Tuesday the 13th, I crossed to the other side because a friend of mine had shared a story of finding paradise. Better pay, independence, true freedom. There's nothing like seeing the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time. My coach tells me now, I still shed tears looking back because I felt helpless. You had to overcome so much, a language barrier and unprofessional parents. You did it all alone, no academic mentor at home. Sometimes I felt dumb because I couldn't read or write. I tell my mom, yeah, don't cry. You my smartest professor because you taught me every story counts. You taught me how to garden so my spirit will grow to care about other flowers outside of our own. Love knows no language barrier. You train me with compassion to help people in need, to see things from a human perspective. Kindness is the greatest wisdom. So in reality, you gave me the best education. Your words echoed in my mind, so I kept fighting through all the tough times. 6 years at a community college, 3 years at university. They can't fade me, they only gave me wings. Now I'm first generation college educated, Spanish literature BA degree. First inaugural class to attend the Latino Leadership Initiative at Harvard for a summer. Not bad for a 1.5 Mexican American. Chicano y que. Happy to be a Mexican descent. Not pride, because George Carlin taught me right. I pay respect to all the people who gave their lives so I could take a seat in the shady AC, away from the fields where the sunbeams beat drums in your head. Hard campesinos' knees are still caked in mud. Their hands are still callous from the hole. I'm still Joaquin, but I'm evolving into a complete human being. I owe it to the si se puedes of my mother, my father's sweat, and hustling with dignity so I could progress. From the peanut fields in Tarimoro, Guanajuato, to a master's of custodial arts in San Francisco, and currently I'm planning my master's in education so I can keep teaching the youth that education pays. Knowledge is the key to liberate ourselves from ourselves and the streets. I pay homage to the lineage of spiritual healers and warriors that paved the way. So I took a long look in the mirror and asked myself, how am I contributing to the legacy today? The video that was shown today, Lost in Detention, I had seen a few weeks ago, and it just blew my mind. It's crazy, it's ridiculous. Going to a direction where we're going to have that, it's going to be possible, more than possible, it's going to be lawful to ask somebody for their papers. That's like asking me for my master. You know, it's like, that's ridiculous. I don't believe in imperialism. I believe in love. And from that love, I was born. I represent compassion, the ability to suffer with those who suffer, and make action plans to upset the setup of living in low-income neighborhoods with lack of resources. And that upset the setup, I owe that philosophy right now to HBO's spoken word artist, Mark Gonzalez, who's a great human being, has taught me so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Before borders, after the Minutemen, echoes of our sisters and brothers que quedaron en la raya preguntan, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué nos odian? Why do you hate us? Hate separates us from our humanity, like segregation into camps of creating and concentrating, dehumanization, and fears of the unknown manifest the daily worries of American citizens. The picture is brown equals criminals, only here to take our jobs, lower wages, and they don't pay taxes. What a lie. The list goes on, and when it's done, the racist cycle infects a virus into our minds, which disconnects us from our hearts. So cruelty, isolation, racial profiling, wasting money, enforcing community safety programs that enslave, give birth to intolerance, take away parents from their children, barbed wires, helicopters, 9mm assault rifles, nice size, poison waters, and walls, handcuffs into detention centers that strip away our rights. It looks a lot more like modern day slavery to me. Only a moment ago. Las voces, las historias de nuestra gente es poder. The power of the spoken word which tells our stories connects us all like water drops. So I turned off the TV and began to read Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, Isabella Bonfrey, Ain't I a Woman, Frederick Douglass. What to the slave is the 4th of July? I ask, are we not humans? HBO spoken word artist Mark Gonzalez inspiration, so I ask, what of the corridos of our people that have traveled freely for centuries, like comets visiting the sun, without passports or papers? Our mere being is evidence of our resistance. We already have victory. The truth rises like lions after slumber, when the echoes of the past can no longer be ignored by the masses. We have fought in every American war, dating back to writing with George Washington, to the war in the Middle East, with some of the highest rates of casualties and declaration of honors. Paul Flores, Chicano Dreams. Why must we continue to bleed and the same promises keep being broken, like the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo? The youth who meet all requirements and seek waking up dreams and entering a community college or university, only desire is to work hard and contribute to the legacy of this great country. Democracy in the land of the future of inclusion. We take back what is ours and only ours by breaking our own wall of sexism, prejudices, and seeking also gender justice. Because until the women are liberated from racism, sexual slavery, the dreams we seek to attain can never be complete or be fulfilled. We have to build our own philosophy, beginning with love. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
There are 65,000 undocumented students who graduate from high schools in the United States every single year. So that's a really big number, and that's a somewhat dated figure, so it actually might be quite a bit higher now. But that's the figure we have. That's a national number. And so those are young people. A lot of them came here as very young children. They grew up here, they went to school. Those of you who work in the schools, who also went to high school here, know that those are young people who went to school here. And they faced a lot of obstacles growing up. Most of their parents are undocumented also. They didn't have a lot of the opportunities that a lot of other young people had growing up. It was really difficult for them to make it to even graduate from high school. And a lot of the stories that we hear from these young people, some of them didn't know they were undocumented until they decided that it was time to go get their driver's license. That's a really common story that we hear. Or until they decided to apply for college, and they went to go fill out the FAFSA and apply for financial aid. They asked their parents what their social security number was, and their parents said, you know, I have something to tell you. And that is, you don't have a social security number. And they had to have that conversation with their parents. But a lot of students also grew up in a community where they understood this and they knew what their situation was. And because of this, we know that the high school dropout rates are also really, really high for undocumented students, and they vary from place to place. But we know that a lot of our undocumented students are not even graduating from high school, so they're not in the 65,000 number, right? So when we talk about the DREAM Act and we think about the DREAM Act, we think of it as a very practical tool for undocumented students, but we also think of it as something that's going to give a lot of our younger undocumented youth hope to even graduate from high school, because they think that there might be an opportunity for them after they graduate from high school. And we want to give young people that opportunity, right, that all young people have. So let's talk about, we heard a lot about what's happening to immigrants in terms of being detained and being deported. That's something that even we're hearing our young people and children are facing. I'm working with a 14-year-old right now who's supposed to be deported tomorrow. So that's something that's happening to dreamers, as undocumented youth are commonly referred to. So that's one major obstacle that these people are facing. But in terms of the DREAM Act, what we talk about a lot is access to college. And so one of the major obstacles is funding for education. So how much does it cost to go to UC Merced, guys? It costs a lot of money. And so undocumented students don't have access to state and federally funded financial aid for the most part. So I talked about students find out they're undocumented when they go to fill out the FAFSA, which is the application you fill out to get financial aid. It asks for your social security number, and you can't get the financial aid, which is a big way that a lot of students are able to finance at least part of their education. So that's a big thing. If you're undocumented, it's also really hard to get a job or a well-paying job, which is another way that a lot of our students are paying for part of their education. So these are really big obstacles for students. It makes it really difficult to go on to college. So what are some of the solutions that have been proposed? And so let's start with California. Let's start with state-based solutions, right? What are we doing in California to make higher education at least a little bit more accessible for our undocumented youth? So California has AB 540. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of AB 540? Cool. So there are a lot of people who have heard of AB 540. So AB 540 was passed in 2001. So it's been around for quite a long time. And what it does is it gives undocumented students access to in-state tuition. And so when you go to college, there are different tuition rates that you can pay when you go to public universities, depending on whether you live in the state or out of the state, or whether you're an international student. And so some of them are cheaper than other rates. And in a lot of states, undocumented students, even though they grew up in the state and they reside in the state and for all intents and purposes are residents of the state, cannot pay the resident tuition rate. And so their tuition is really, really expensive, on top of which they cannot get financial aid. But in California, we changed that in 2001. And we said if you graduated from high school here, and before you graduated, you went to high school here for 3 years in the state of California, then you qualify for AB 540, and you can pay in-state tuition. You can pay the resident tuition rate just like everybody else. And so that really, really helped a lot of people have access to the public universities. And so a lot of times you'll hear the term AB 540 student, which is how a lot of undocumented students refer to themselves in their communities, AB 540 students. And that's why. And there's about 11 states that have that now and allow undocumented students to pay in-state tuition. And it makes a really big difference. You've seen the college attendance rates have gone way up. Because it's a lot cheaper, right guys? It's a lot cheaper. But it's still really expensive, and we know that the cost of college has been going up and up and up and up and up. So California and some other states have been talking for the last few years about how do we give undocumented students access to financial aid. We know that as the state of California, we can't give undocumented students access to federal financial aid, but we can pass a law and we can give undocumented students access to financial aid that the state is paying for. And so this is something that we've been advocating for a number of years. We've actually passed several times, but we had a governor who kept vetoing it. And so last year we passed the California Dream Act. And so in July, AB 130 was signed into law. So how many of you heard about the California Dream Act? And AB 130 and AB 131? Cool, so quite a few of you. So AB 130 was also known as the California Dream Act Part 1. And under AB 130, AB 540 students are undocumented students. And it's now law, which is pretty exciting. So AB 540 students can apply for private scholarships that are administered by public universities. And so this is scholarships that are created by private donations, a lot of alumni funds, and that kind of thing. It became effective January 1st. A lot of the applications are starting to come out. So this is something to kind of keep an eye on, and I'm going to talk in a minute about some things that are going on with it. So that's part one of what's going on in California right now. Part two, which is something that is in some ways a bigger deal, is AB 131, which is also California Dream Act Part 2, which was signed into law October 8th of last year, becomes effective next year. And what it does is says that undocumented students, AB 540 students, can get state-funded financial aid. Money that the state of California is giving students to go to public universities. And so what that means is that these students can get institutional grants, which is the UC grant, the Educational Opportunity Program, things like that. At the community colleges, this is the Board of Governors fee waiver. And one of the things that's most talked about is the Cal Grant. So students will be able to apply for that. And, you know, all of those things are losing a lot of their funding right now. So as much as that's something we need to work on, making sure there's actually money there for students to apply for, but students should have access to that. All students should have access to that. So that's a big deal. That's a big step for California. California is one of the only states that's doing that. And it should make a big impact. So what I really want to talk about is, in terms of implementation, what can we do, right? We passed this law, that's really great, but there's a lot that we still need to do. So on AB 130, which is the private scholarships, it's great, it passed. The thing is, every school has to implement it, right? To our knowledge, most schools have done nothing about this. Most schools have done basically nothing in terms of actually opening up their scholarships so that undocumented students can apply for them. And so this is going to require all of us to go to the schools in our communities and say, hey, this law passed, what are you doing? Where are your scholarships that undocumented students can apply for? Where is the application? How can we get it? How can we give it out to students? And making sure that they're actually implementing this. Because if we don't actually go and talk to them, most of them will just not bother to do it, right? And then we need to make sure that they're actually putting money into these kinds of funds so that the money's there for students to get for their education. And then AB 131, which is the state-funded financial aid. One thing that I think is really important is making sure that young people know that this is available to them. And when the application is released, making sure that it's distributed to our high school seniors, to current college students, making sure that students know how to fill it out, because these are students who will not have filled out this application before. Also, like I mentioned, these are programs that are losing a lot of funding right now in the California state budget. So it's something we have to be really involved in making sure that we are advocating with the state of California to put money back into these funds, to put more money into the Cal Grant, because we know that when there isn't money, undocumented students are going to be especially hurt by this because they don't have as many other options to pay for their education. They can't get money from the federal government. They can't go get a job that pays decently. So if there isn't money in the Cal Grant, they're going to have a really hard time paying for their education, and a lot of them just won't be able to go to college. So those are kind of the basic things. I want to stop and take questions on California Dream Act before I move on. Yes?
So why wouldn't schools want to make applications available and participate?
I don't think they don't want to for the most part. I think they just, it's another thing they have to do. It's another administrative thing. So I think they just need somebody to go talk to them, tell them how to, remind them that they should, and ask them to do it.
You said that there's there could be scholarships that could be available to undocumented students. Is that at a community college level also?
Yes. The AB 130 scholarships are for all.
For all?
Yes. But they're school by school, so you have to go see what your school
So I would have to go and talk to the administration at the local community college and ask them if there is some, and if not, how come?
Right, so basically what AB 130 does is the scholarships that they already have that are privately funded but administered by their school, they can now open up to undocumented students.
So you mean for example, Merced College here has a Merced College Scholarship Foundation. So you would have to go to that foundation to see which ones are available?
Right.
Or could they all be available?
Anything that doesn't receive money from the federal government, if it receives money from the federal government, they cannot open it up to undocumented students. Yes. So I want to, just for a second, talk about how does this relate to SB 1070. How many of you have heard of SB 1070? Everybody's heard it. What are they doing in Arizona? They're trying to deport everyone, right? So SB 1070 is also known as kind of the Show Me Your Papers law, what they're doing in Arizona. And the Supreme Court is right now kind of looking at whether Arizona can actually do this, right? And there's and a lot of states have kind of followed in the footsteps of Arizona and started passing really harsh anti-immigrant laws. And the reason that I bring this up is a lot of these laws, some of these laws, are really targeting students. And so they're kind of on the opposite end of the California Dream Act. And I just want people to be aware of this. So for example, in Georgia, they're actually banning undocumented students from their public universities. They're actually saying, not only can you not get financially, but you literally cannot enroll in our public universities if you are an undocumented student. And so while California is passing the DREAM Act, and that's really great, other states are taking a complete opposite approach to this and saying one of the things we're going to do while we're targeting immigrants with our laws is we're going to target students and we're going to keep them out of our universities. I think it's really important to be aware of that, and we're making a petition to President Obama asking him to stop laws like SB 1070 and also stop secure communities. So the petition is back there also. If you would be so kind as to stop by and sign it, then I will give you that pretty poster. So I wanted to bring that up because I think that all of these state laws are kind of related. And I also think that, in regards to your question, one of the things that's happening is all these states are passing all these different laws, and some of them are really great, like the California Dream Act, and some of them are really terrible, like what's going on in Arizona and Georgia and Alabama, is that the federal government is doing a lot of really bad stuff, like secure communities, and they have the potential to do a lot of really good stuff, like pass the Federal Dream Act, that is just not getting done. So the Federal Dream Act is a bill. It's been around for over 10 years now, which is way too long for it to have been around and not passed. But basically what it does is it provides a path to legalization for undocumented youth. that we've been talking about. So for people who came to the country as children, and kind of the specific requirements are that you have come to the United States when you were younger than 16, and that you'd be younger than 35 right now, that you graduate from high school here or get your GED. And then once it passes, you have to go to college or serve in the military or possibly do community service, and you would be on a path to citizenship in broad terms. And the bill constantly changes, but that's kind of the idea. The idea is that we have this entire community of young people who are here, who came here as children, who know no other home, and they deserve to have the opportunity to be here and to be full and contributing members of our society. And most of them want to go to college, and we should give them the opportunity to do that. And it's a bill that has a lot of support. It's a bill that has had bipartisan support for a long time. And it's, in fact, usually had a Republican lead sponsor, and it's come really close to passing a number of times. And so it always kind of baffles people why it still hasn't passed. So just to give you kind of an idea, it's been kind of stuck in this position where it's always had more than 50 votes. It's had more than the number of votes that it usually takes to pass a bill. And because there are some people who really, really, really hate the idea of giving immigrants, even little kids, the right to stay here, they filibuster the bill, which means they get up and say, well, you know, for this bill, because we really hate the idea, we are going to say that it's going to take 60 votes to pass this bill. And we can never quite get to 60 votes. So that's why it's stuck. And we were actually really close. We had a number of Republicans who were on board to pass the bill. And then John McCain, who was a really big supporter of the bill, decided to run for president in 2008. And when it was being voted on in 2007 and it was about to pass, decided not to vote on it at all. He didn't vote no, but he just walked off the floor and didn't vote. And so it didn't pass, and from then on, we've had a lot of trouble getting Republicans to support it at all. So that was kind of a downhill point. But what I will say is there's also a lot of hope for it. It did in 2010. It actually passed the House of Representatives, which was a really huge step. It was the first time that any pro-immigrant bill had passed either house in 10 years. So that was huge. And a lot of what happened was that undocumented youth were active in their communities. They were going to Washington, D.C. They were advocating. They were mobilizing. They were really vocal. They were walking around Washington, D.C. and they walk around in their caps and their gowns to be symbolic for this bill. And they really created a movement, and they got it passed in the House of Representatives, which was incredible. And then it fell a few votes short in the Senate, and so it ultimately didn't pass. But that's how close it is. That's how close we really, really are with this. And so it's a tricky year. I know it's a tricky year. It's 2012. It's an election year. It's a tricky year. But because, and I know this was mentioned earlier, you know, there's a really, really powerful Latino vote. And one of the things we've seen very recently with the DREAM Act is the Republicans have decided to propose their own DREAM Act because they know that this is an issue that the Latino community is watching very closely and really cares about. And so it's very evident that this is an issue that we can be vocal about this year, and we can really kind of get some attention. So I think it's really important that we not stay quiet on this year, and that we tell all of the presidential candidates what we want to see, and that this is something we really expect more than talk on this year. I think we have an opportunity. And the other thing that I just want to add before I finish up is that President Obama has a really important role to play in this. He had an important role in kind of getting the votes lined up in 2010, and he's always been a supporter of the DREAM Act. he also has an administrative role. He can't pass the DREAM Act as the president. But one of the things that the DREAM Act would do, obviously, when we give all of these young people a path to legalization, we're going to keep a lot of them from being deported under programs like Secure Communities, right? That's a really big thing that we can do for them. President Obama has a number of other ways that he can do that for these young people that are non-legislative, which means they don't go through Congress. And so what a lot of advocates are saying now is, President Obama, we understand that you support the DREAM Act. We understand that you cannot actually pass the DREAM Act. You're the president. That's not a function that you have. But we also understand that there are a number of other things you can do for undocumented youth to stop their deportation as a group. And because we're constantly seeing undocumented youth who would qualify for the DREAM Act be deported, one of the big asks from the undocumented youth community to President Obama in this election year is do something that is within your power as the president to stop the deportation of DREAM Act eligible young people. And there are a number of different terms and kind of ideas that are thrown around for this. Some people talk about deferred action. Some people talk about something called parole in place. There are a number of different avenues, and people kind of debate which one would be best and which one he can actually do. But the main point is that he's the president, and he is doing things like Secure Communities, and he has a lot of power, and there are a lot of alternatives to programs like that. There are a lot of positive things he could be doing. And so, we want to ask people who are in Congress to do things like the DREAM Act, and we want to ask the president to do the things that he can do, right?
Wasn't there in that 2010 December vote where the senators did not approve it, there were like 4 short?
Yeah.
Wasn't there an issue of military authorization that came into that? And wasn't also the military the one that started the DREAM Act because they wanted young people to be in the military and get killed?
So the DREAM Act was included at one point in 2010 in the Department of Defense authorization bill, which was more of a technical issue of how they were voting on it. But that actually wasn't how it was being voted on when it ultimately passed.
But they're being used as pawns is I think one of the things that I want to, it's not being treated like a humane, issue, that it's harming young people, that it could be so positive for our country. Why aren't the politicians really seeing that part of it?
So that point has raised a lot about the military component of the DREAM Act. And the response that I've heard undocumented youth who advocate for the DREAM Act give is that there are undocumented youth in a community whose dream is to join the military. And I respect that. It's also very valid and important point that there are a lot of undocumented youth who might join the military because they don't feel like they have another option. And it's our responsibility as a community to make sure that they have another option, make sure that they have a way to go to college as an alternative. Because no one should join the military because they feel like they don't have another option, right? The other thing that's really important about the DREAM Act is there's this third component of community service, because we know that ultimately not everyone is going to be able to afford to go to college, and that's a reality that our community faces. And so we want to make sure that if people cannot afford to go to college, they are not forced to join the military in order to qualify for the DREAM Act. And so the community service provision has at times been taken out of the DREAM Act, and we find that very troubling because we feel like that would force members of our community to join the military. And you're right, that would be very troublesome. So one thing that we really advocate for is keeping the community service provision in the DREAM Act so that we don't have an entire group of young people that are forced to join the military just because they cannot afford to go to college.
Mine's more like a commentary. I'm a former Vietnam veteran. And the reasons I oppose the military portion of the DREAM Act is two. One, when I went to school, I went to undergraduate, graduate school, they didn't have no cap on the amount of money you pay for education. Now there's a cap involved. There's a cap, I don't know what the amount is. The other reason I'm opposed to it, especially war, is because I've heard this term post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of people that serve in the military, especially when I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, how you're gonna get that, and if that stays for the rest of your life, it's a traumatic experience you can't overcome, so that's another reason I oppose that particular portion.
Is there any risk for the parents of the dreamers when they aspire, if this ever gets approved, that there would be any kind of risk for them since they have to fill out applications? It's nothing magical. The government will be getting exactly the addresses where the parents are, where they've been living. So, I mean, are there any concerns from that level? You know, are people thinking about that?
I think that people are often afraid to apply for various forms of immigration relief for that reason. I think that there shouldn't be any difference between applying for the DREAM Act and applying for any other form of immigration.
You know, I really admire the dreamers. You know, they're undocumented and unafraid. You know, they take a big risk just for education. You know, it's a lot of things. It's something that a lot of us take advantage of. You know, and they're willing to get detained. Just like we saw in that movie, Lost in Detention. They're willing to go through all that just to get an education. You know, that's really something to be admired. They're the brave ones. You know, they're the ones that are willing to go right into the valley of the beast, go through it. You know, to just get an education. And they probably won't even get an education after being detained. You know, but they're doing it for somebody else. You know, and as the federal DREAM Act, you know, to actually think about being a citizen, to be a citizen, all you gotta do is be in the military. You know, that's like being a part of the machine that's keeping us down. You know, and it's horrible. It's full of negativity. They want to give something positive out of doing something negative, and you know, it doesn't really sit well with them. You know, I think the California DREAM Act would probably be the best route to go. It's education, and you know, and it's a positive investment, but you can get a positive reward.
So the California DREAM Act is passed. We have the California DREAM Act. And I think the point that was raised earlier about, so what happens to students, they manage to get through school, they graduate, what happens next, right? And because this is a growing population, and because we've been fighting for the DREAM Act for so long, and we know, especially in California, students have been organizing and mobilizing for a number of years. So the number of students who are graduating from college, the number of undocumented students is growing and growing and growing. It's becoming an increasing issue. And there's an organization that's in the Bay Area actually put out a really good guide to life after college for undocumented students. It's called Educators for Fair Consideration. It's on their website. So it just has some good tips for students. It's not a solution, but it's a resource. But I think the DREAM Act and other forms of kind of relief are kind of the only thing.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here back in the Valley. I don't know if many of you know me, but I was the student body president of California State University, Fresno, about last year. I came out as undocumented when the campus newspaper released my identity. And so now I work for a foundation. I'm doing my master's degree at California State University, Long Beach, but this semester I decided to take a break, do some online classes, and start advocating and working for a foundation that helps AB 540 undocumented students. But basically what I'm going to share, she did a great job presenting the information on the federal DREAM Act and the California DREAM Act. I will say though that the application for AB 131 is out already. That is out. Students can begin filling it out, but they won't receive funds until the beginning of next year and the fall. So do spread the word that the application is out. They can apply for it. It's a pretty lengthy process, just like a FAFSA, meters just like FAFSA. But I would tell students, and the website is www.caldreamact.org, caldreamact.org, and so spread the word. But basically, I just want to share my story, what happened at Fresno State, what happened in Fresno, and what's happening now, since I'm very well connected with a lot of the DREAM Act organizations that are nationwide and in California, and what we're prepared to see in the future, especially in this election year, and how we're going to eventually pass the DREAM Act, and how we're going to eventually pass immigration reform and get our people through. But basically, I'll share the story of Adriana Sanchez first, because she was the one that actually really led the first wave of activism in Fresno State. You guys all recall that Jerry Brown and Mick Whitman were vying for the governor's race. We happened to have, we got a debate there in Fresno. We were asked to see if we can get an undocumented student to come out and ask a big question to the candidates. We felt that Adriana was the best person to do so because she was young, she was a young Latina, she was getting 3 degrees, 3 bachelor's degree, very accomplished. And so we asked her to do it. She asked the question to Meg Whitman and Jerry Brown, and that basically sunk the Meg Whitman's campaign right there. That question right there, and also the other immigrant story with, I believe, Nikki Diaz, the maid. Those 2 factors were the reason why Meg Whitman lost the election. People saw that she was dishonest, she was lying to people, and she was attacking our community, our people, our students, by telling them that if she was elected governor of California, she was going to kick out all of the students out of the university system. And so that didn't fly with the people of California. After that, things kind of moved on to Fresno State, and it kind of shifted to me. That's where the campus newspaper released my story that I wasn't getting paid because I was undocumented and that was against the law. That created a whole controversy. Received not only local, state attention, but national and even international news. You know, I was getting interviewed from Japan, Colombia, Great Britain. So we got a lot of attention. I was fortunate, I was selected to go to DC to actually advocate for the DREAM Act, meet with our congressional representatives, Jim Costa, and many others, and many other federal representatives, to lobby for the DREAM Act, try to work with them, where it did fail by 5 votes in the Senate, but it did pass in the House. But leaving there, we all gathered around, and we all made a pact, a vow that we would remember the 5 votes, the 5 people that voted against, well, first of all, the people that voted against us in the Senate, that we lost by 5 votes. We vowed that we would get back at them in 2012 at the polls. And that was kind of like the birth of the campaign that she mentioned, that my voice, your vote is my voice. We realized right there that we needed to get our community, those that can vote, to go out and vote, and those that have that ability to go and speak for us do so. So we kind of started there, and we've been building it up ever since. And more organizations are building up their own groups, like Voto Latino, the ACLU with their campaign, and so many more are getting more active and trying to get the Latino vote to come out, because that'll truly make a difference. That made a difference in California, which is why we got the California DREAM Act, and why we're going to get the federal DREAM Act passed. But that's basically me. I mean, the only reason why I kind of made it out of Fresno State, got my degree, was because my community came out and supported me. I had the support of the Mexican consulate, which Gladia's right here. I had the support of the Brown Berets. You guys came out. I remember at that big meeting when my biggest fan, Neil O'Brien, was right there, and Rafi got into a little fight with him, so that was pretty fun to see. But my community came out and supported for me. They came and supported us, all of us, when we had a rally, one of the biggest shows of demonstration of support for the DREAM Act student. And we're building more momentum in Fresno. We're trying to set up a scholarship fund in Fresno. Like I said, I work for a foundation, which we do offer scholarships to 8540 students, undocumented students. But we're now trying to work with the university to set one up at Fresno State, right through the university, to make it easier so people can donate. I'm actually working with people that most people would never have thought I'd be working with, that are Republicans, conservatives, but they're farmers. They see how their workers work every day and how they struggle to meet ends meet, and they have kids going to college and they're undocumented too, and so they want to help. You know, they're supportive of the undocumented students and wanting them to progress and move forward. So we're building a wide coalition with a wide range of groups, and it's really great to see this. I think we will see reform coming soon. I think the biggest reason why we don't see reform is because, you know, the Republican Party wants to see the president be defeated. So they vote no on everything that he puts up for Congress. And so they voted no on the DREAM Act. And so they're kind of pinning it on him to push more, to do more. And so I think if we can get this president reelected, I think he's going to do more things administratively, more things through Congress. But I think definitely that once we take out those people that voted against our community out of office and put in those that will fit our views, and we'll support the DREAM Act, we'll support comprehensive reform, we will get change. She did mention the Michael Rubio bill. That one's another, what a lot of people are saying, it's going to be another Bracero program for Dreamers, which doesn't give them a pathway to citizenship. It just gives them a visa so they can stay here and study. And if they're lucky, then they can get green card and then citizenship. We don't know how that's going to turn out. I know a lot of groups are working on it. We'll see what the actual language says. But I don't think that's a good choice for our community. I don't think we should water ourselves down too much to the point where we're just used as a pawn just to get votes during the election. And we never actually achieve our dreams. There's too many people, too many students that I see that are graduating, that get depressed and don't know what to do with their lives. They get a degree. There's too many students that are in high school that are not completing high school because of that. They have no choices, or they think they don't have any choices. We were fortunate enough that the California Dream Act passed, and that's one of the things I do in my foundation is I go to the high schools and universities and I give presentations on the California Dream Act and the application process. And every time I see a high school kid and I tell them about the possibilities and opportunities that they had about getting financial aid that I never had, they want to go to college. You see that young girl or a young kid that wants to be a lawyer, nurse, an engineer, teacher, and I tell them that you have opportunities to get that I never had, that I had to pay everything out of my pocket, work really hard, 1, 2, 3 jobs. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Your parents don't have to sacrifice as much for you and worry every night. You now have the ability to dedicate yourself to your education and become something bigger than a lot of the other dreamers in the past had to strive for. And so I'm definitely hopeful, and I see that a lot of the students are hopeful now. And so I think California leading the way is certainly making a big difference. We are changing the way the whole immigration rhetoric is going on by passing the California Dream Act, by passing the Trust Act and other similar measures. We're showing them that we're not Arizona, and we're leading the way. Hawaii's considered proposing their own Dream Act, similar to California, as I know New York is considering it. Maryland passed theirs, Chicago, Illinois passed theirs. So it's moving, the movement is growing, and more people are coming to our side, and so I'm definitely hopeful, and I hope you can continue supporting us, continue supporting the undocumented students. If you ever see one, if they ever come up to you and they tell you that they're undocumented, help them out, donate to whatever foundations that are in your area, offer them internships. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know is we might not be able to legally work, but we can have internships. And you can pay them as a scholarship. And so offering them those avenues so they can use their skills and keep contributing is probably the best thing you can do to help these students. So, thank you.
I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about the attacks that took place against you when you were at Fresno State. I read about it a little bit in the Community Alliance newspaper that we're helping promote in the community.
Those were some fun times in 2010. The Tea Party is big heavily here in the Central Valley, as many of you know, especially big in Fresno. From what we've seen is the Fresno chapter is one of the largest chapters in the United States. But they really mobilized to try to get me out of office for some reason. One of the things I was kind of confused was, I'm the student body president. I'm not a member of Congress. Why are you trying so hard to get me out? But regardless, they tried really hard. Obviously, they didn't succeed. I was able to graduate. But there was just core group of students, a few students, but mostly just members of the community from those groups, from the outlying towns that were very, very anti-immigrant, anti-AB 540 students, and anti-me. And so they would come to our meetings, they would rally around, they would hold protests. They even created a special website in my name dedicated to me called therealpedro.com. It's still up there, so they would post different things. At one point, they thought that I was actually a citizen and that I was using this as a ploy to get the Dream Act passed for everybody else. And I was like, where did you hear that from? Because there's probably more than one pager of nurses in California and the United States. And so they were trying to bring me down, trying to bring the community down. So that was one of the things that was hard. But like I said, luckily I had the support of the community and other groups, and I made it out alive. One of the things that did happen to me was there was a lot of false information, and I know that there was rumors that I was registering to vote, committing all these different crimes, and so there was an actual investigation on me on that. It turned out that I didn't. Like I said, I wish I could if I had the ability to, but I didn't register to vote. The Secretary of State and the Attorney General issued an investigation that they cleared my name. They also called the FBI, the CIA, the local ICE enforcement. So they went after me in every enforcement agency they could. And this is all on his website too, by the way. So you can see all the letters by the FBI and the police department saying like, we don't really care about him. He's a student, leave him alone. And so they went after me big, but at the end, like I said, what prevailed was the support of the community, my family, and my friends.
That have children that are immigrants and themselves are immigrants, what advice would you give to them? For those that want to go to college, what advice would you give to them so that they can actually go to college, so they can motivate their kids and say, like, even though you're undocumented, there's an opportunity for you. What advice would you give to them, to the parents?
The parents that want to go,
No, the parents that
whose children?
Yeah, are undocumented, but they don't have the motivation because of the documentation that they have. So what advice would you give to parents?
I would definitely highlight the California Dream Act, that they now have a lot of opportunities that they can go. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, I did a presentation in Hanford West High School when I was giving a presentation to the local camp program, the migrant program. And a lot of the parents were smiling big when I told them that they can get up to $2,000 to $3,000 on Cal grants. Scholarships are open to the students. And a lot of them were shocked, and they were like, we didn't even know they could go to college, and now that we know they can go to college and they have access to funds, a lot of the parents, either way, they come to make their lives better, and not just their life better, but those are their kids. And so just remind them about that, like, why did you come here? You came here to search opportunities for you and your family. Let your family grow, let your student go to college, and they have opportunities now, so definitely highlight those new opportunities.
In the program now, we had thought some general reflections. So, unfortunately, David, Bacon, and Mario Cifuentes did not stay. They did not follow instructions. But we have Artie Foley here, and Karen, can you come up? And Pedro, can you come up? And the idea would be if you just have or stay here. And maybe if you just have any general comments, and then we're going to open it up and just have a little relax. If we have some ideas about next steps here locally, and just spend a little bit of time more in conversation before we end. So maybe you would like to start, Artie. Just any general reflection at the end here.
I just want to say I'm so impressed by how engaged you all are on these issues and how well you understand what's going on. And I think even a small community of folks can make an enormous amount of difference. And what's great is in our new age of communication and access to information, we can link up with other places. So in Berkeley, somebody was saying, well, it's different in Berkeley. It is. We do have progressive folks there, but that doesn't mean that, we can't all learn from each other. So my reflection is that I can see that there's a lot that can come out of this forum. This appears to be an amazing first step, and that depending on what is the issue that you're most engaged on, right, whether it's supporting dream students, encouraging people to go to college, working on enforcement issues, protecting people's civil rights, any and all of those things there are ways to work on those issues. And I'm happy to talk to folks individually or put them in touch with advocacy organizations that are working on these issues.
I would just echo that. I think this is a great group of people that you have here today. I've gotten to hear a lot about the planning as it's gone on. And I'm excited that you all made it out today. And I'm especially excited to see the students here today, as usual. And I encourage you all to get involved with the things that are going on locally, and also to plug into some of the more statewide and national efforts. There are, like she mentioned, there are a lot of ways that you can plug in. There are, if you are interested, especially in some of the anti-deportation work that's going on, there are some really kind of easy ways to plug in, and then there are some more involved ways to plug in, such as coming to these forums. I'm pretty sure there was a committee that planned all of this. Thank you guys for all that work that you did. So those of you who weren't involved in that, you could probably be involved next time. But there are also some really simple ways to get involved. there is an organization called dreamactivist.org that I really encourage you all to go home and look up their website and just sign up for their emails. Because every time, we talked about a lot of how people get detained and what's happening with young people. And what they do is every time they learn about someone who's getting deported, they launch a really public campaign for them. And they've been really, really successful at stopping deportations. And it's a really community-led thing. This is an organization that's run entirely by undocumented youth. And I find it one of the most powerful things I've seen out there, which is why I wanted to share it with all of you. But they launch this campaign every time they see someone who's being deported. And what they need each and every one of you to do is just sign a petition online and make one phone call. That's all that they need you to do. And by having each of you do this every single time someone is getting deported, they've literally stopped probably 100 deportations already. But they really need every single one of you to do that every time there's a deportation. So please go home and do that. Also, sign up for all our other things that are going on, but I really wanted to plug that one thing quickly because it relates to a lot of the things we've talked about here today. And it's a simple, easy thing that you can do on a regular basis.
So that's dreamact.org?
Dreamactivist.org. Marianne, did you have a question about that? Yeah.
Well, I guess the last thing I can really say is, being the political buff that I am, is just remember to register to vote and tell your friends and family to vote. Because honestly, it is going to be about who is going to be in Congress that's going to decide our future. My future, the future of the rest of the Dreamers. We can't wait 10 years, and even if the president does get reelected, he's not going to be there for 4 years. So even if he does administrative release, that's only for 4 years. And so who's going to be next after him might not be favorable to us. So definitely encourage vote, and this area is especially critical in this coming election. You do have a special candidate running here. I won't mention names or parties or anything, but it has a lot of significance symbolically for our movement. And so I definitely encourage you to get involved and politically, socially, with the students, and inform the community.
Thank you all. Can we have a round of applause for these folks? Martha? I'm just going to read some names. Thank you. They're in our program, but this event wouldn't have happened without the hard work and contribution of a lot of people. So I want to thank Lourdes Andrade, Eric Andrade, Coffee Bandits, Maria Gonzalez, J&R Tacos, Jazz, our artist, Kenny McBride, our other artist, Mikasa Restaurant, Marilyn Moschel, Catalina Ochoa, Gumercindo Reynaga, Panaderia Guadalajara in Atwater and in Merced, Merced Organizing Project, Barbara Hill, Dave Hedlund, Susan Walsh, Frank Baudino, Soledad Moschel, and our interpreters who came to help us out today.
Our planning committee, and we kind of had actually a dozen meetings, believe it or not. The idea for the forum hatched and the Journey for Justice about a November meeting last year. And we started the road or meeting in January, inviting different people, different organizations, and mostly, the people that we put down here and thanking them for their participation actually are, in and out of the loop here. But it would be Robin DeLugan, we misspelled the name, sorry. Marta Acevedo, who is also terrific at doing some of the layout work for the program. Ed Castro, who is actually the Journey for Justice president at the moment. Hector de la Cerda, who actually is with the ACLU, but Kieran actually came. He has gone on to other ventures. Francisco Figueroa is also a Journey for Justice member. Jason Flores, he is actually our secretary. And our DJ today with Censor. DJ Censor, all right. And we have Jeff Freitas, who has tremendous skills in technology and really felt very comfortable with him being in charge of that. Jazz also was here. She's been one of our artists and also has been involved with Occupy, and there's a few people here from Occupy. Connie Jones, who is with this United Methodist Church of Merced, who could not be here. She had another function to go to. Amy Martinez, since we're all slaves, she had to work today, couldn't be with us, but she is also someone who is the treasurer for the Journey for Justice. John Murray, who is this gentleman right here, who is also very involved with Occupy and the Journey for Justice. Jesse Ornelas, we appreciate the Brown Berets who are here with some up-and-coming Brown Beret juniors here that are also learning about their history and being involved in their community very young. We have Gloria Peral, who is a UC Merced student, who we appreciate also, and Mecha, with Mecha de UC Merced. Mary Ann Reynolds, who is with the Unitarian Universalist of Merced, also with very, very much worry and interest, and she's taken off. She went to go meet with a supervisor. She went to want to meet with this person and that person. She emailed, I think, half the people in Merced to get them to come here, but she has tremendous talents. We appreciate Marianne also, and I think she understands now that the issue of immigration isn't just for Mexican or Latino people. It's for everybody, really. Okay, Mario Cifuentes, who's the professor that you also heard this morning. Gabriela Villalobos, who is also Mecha de UC Merced. And Linda Whitlow, who is also our vice president of the Journey for Justice. So I also like to thank my husband, Dr. Sandoval, back there in the camera. He also always gives the support. And also, just everybody, I really want to appreciate that you're here, the reporters who came from the newspapers, appreciate you all. I do want to pass on one suggestion that David Bacon made before he left, and I think it kind of folds in with some of the interest that there is. They say in the Oakland area, they have meetings, they call them dignity committees. And what it is people continually getting involved with the issues of immigration, understanding more, and maybe even taking local actions. I think this is the time to really use our feet, and use our minds to really learn more from each other and use our resources. Like Allison said, we definitely are gonna call on you. Sometimes it seems that the Valley is a different country because we're 2 hours away from different places. But if people get involved, the last thing I want to do is really invite you all to become members of the California Central Valley Journey for Justice. Our meeting will be next Saturday here in this area. It'll be in a room called the Music Room, a little ways on the other side of the church complex. And you're all welcome to come and help us to continue with actions. So this is all very important. Jason had a suggestion?
I wanted to encourage people to visit the literature table. In the Tribuno del Pueblo, there's two very good articles that were done by David Bacon, one of the presenters here today, about the role of the artist in making social change. And I think that's very important. That same issue has a lot of stuff about Occupy, for example, which has taken real favorable positions around immigrants in New York and in various places around the country. If you can, please give a donation too, because these papers aren't supported by any corporations or the ICE or anybody else.
This isn't very much related, or it kind of is in a way, but there's going to be a general strike. It's going to be May 1st. So just a reminder for everyone, there's about 140 cities already, unions and everyone, that's it.
My name is Ramiro Coronado, and I'm an immigration advocate. I'll tell Gloria that if they do have some kind of immigration questions, whenever they put a meeting together, be welcome to help them. And I can probably cover anything, any question on immigration law. Do you have anyone right now? Do you have the one? ¿Tiene una pregunta? ¿Qué es? You in English? Or later? Okay, might be private. Okay, I understand.
Ramiro actually worked with Catholic Social Services for how many months?
24 years.
Woohoo! 24 years, almost my age. Or
Well, I just want to thank Gloria and everybody that put this together. I really read about it like on Wednesday, and I'm like, you know what, I need to be there. I graduated from high school in 1995, and I worked for 5 years. I wanted to go to college really bad. I guess I was a dreamer, but I didn't really act on that dream. I was afraid, and we needed the money, so I decided to work. And so since then, it's always been my dream to go back to school. I instilled in my little brother and sister to go to school. They were born here, and they just both graduated from the University of Fresno State. And I'm really proud of them. But I always wanted to fulfill my dream, and now that the Dream Act has passed, I'm 35 years old, so I'm going to go to college. So I'm really happy about that. So I wanted to come here and just learn as much as I can, because my youngest daughter just turned 5 and she's going to be going to kindergarten. It's the perfect time for me to go back to school. And I just want to teach my children, it doesn't matter how old you are, your dreams can come true. So I really believe that I can do this, and I do have some immigration issues, so I got to do that too. So thank you so much.
I also want to remind you all that, many times we forget that we do have human rights. And I'd like to invite you to pick up one of our brochures, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is a document that's not very well known, but there's a lot of, at least, I think it's 32 different items that every human being should be guaranteed. And one of them is a right to education. So I think sometimes, we need to be aware of what we as a people have a right, as a human right to do. Anybody over here? My comadre Catalina, thank her for the main dish. She slaved till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Hello, my name is Adrian Reyes. I'm a member from Merced, the Houston Merced. And I'm just happy to be here. Being here 6 in the morning. But, I'm happy to contribute to this. And I'm very happy that all of you showed up. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Diego. Also a Merced student. I would just like to say, like Gloria was saying about, we have human rights, but sometimes those rights are shadowed away, or they're not being given to us, and we're trying to take it away. And it's people like you guys that come and support us and try to spread the word, and that come up and allow us to have the Dream Act get passed. It's just not just in California, but federal. And I would just like to say thank you to all of you guys for the support. As I can definitely say, I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Lee comes from Happy House and the mall interpreter. And this is a good conference, good opportunity for everybody to know about immigration for once. They already saying Mr. David because of my mom voice, not shut up, and it's just only one person. But hopefully next time or next week, we will show up more than today. So thank you.
I'd like to thank Carolina, who did the interpreting in Spanish also. I appreciate that.
Oh, gosh.
Robin.
Right, of course. Both of them, they are the co-facilitators of this occasion for today. And I just want us all to recognize the amount of time and devotion they have put into organizing this. And I'm sure we're all very grateful for their effort and for the result of getting us all together and what we have learned today. So thank you very much.
I'm Gloria from Merced, and I was really excited about participating in the forum, and looking forward to hopefully working with you guys more. And what I wanted to say is that
as us students, young people, it's our duty to fight for our families' rights. So we have to make sure that they get what they deserve because they do. And I myself, I struggle. So imagine how other students and their families struggle. Like, I'm kind of nervous right now. But yeah, it's our duty, us jóvenes, our duty to fight for our siblings' rights, our families' rights. If they're scared because they can't come out, it's our duty to come out. And yeah.
Going back to what Gloria said, it is our duty to, but if you guys have any children, any siblings, encourage them to fight for these rights. Because there's a lot of students that the enthusiasm for this, we lack. It's very lacking in the youth. And we really need a lot more youth to fight for this because we have the power, but we're not using it. So please encourage your siblings, friends, everybody to please get more involved with this because we need a lot more youth to help out.
Jason Flores. I'm a secretary for the California Central Valley Journey for Justice, and I just kind of reflected on if you look on the flyer, you see all the sponsors. You know, it's just really interesting to see all these groups come together and unite on an event and an issue like this. You know, we need more unity on these issues. It's not just, I know sometimes when we think of immigration, we just think it's a Mexican thing or a Latino thing, but it affects everybody. So just don't want anybody to go home with that reflection that it's just stricken to one particular ethnic group. Because this fight affects everybody, whether you're an immigrant. I mean, I would say I'm undocumented in the sense that I'm undocumented with healthcare. If I were to go to a healthcare facility, it's like I'm undocumented. I wouldn't qualify for healthcare. So in that sense, I'm undocumented. So I can sympathize with that movement and say that a lot of us share a lot with what's going on with immigrants, whether we lost our job, we're going through a foreclosure, whatever issue we're dealing with, that we're in that same group of the dispossessed in this country, and you know, we just all need to come together if we want to make change. And another thing is that sometimes these issues don't affect us personally. So like with the DREAM Act, I'm not a student that's undocumented, but I definitely can sympathize with that. You know, to me, I see the human right aspect of it, the spiritual aspect of it. You know, that all human beings are sacred beings, and so, you know, coming together, I think having all these groups just come together and really voicing out and speaking on this issue. I just want to thank everybody and thank everybody who came, who maybe wasn't even affected directly by something in immigration, but just because they're able to, from their spirit, say, hey, you know, this is a human right thing. It's not an immigrant thing. It's simply a human right thing. And just thank everybody for that. Peace.
As a president of Journey for Justice, I want to mention the significance of May 1st. In the past, it's been indicated that that's an event for workers only, talking about it's a communist, socialist event, but no, with the 99% trying to destroy our livelihood and everything, I think it's going to be a possibility for all groups to work together. And historically, the 1% has been good at keeping us divided. I think we need to be united and trying to better our lives.
Well, I think we all have homework, and our homework is to not just stop here with this forum, but actually to either do the job that we're doing and doing it better, be hooked up. Remember that we as an individual cannot do as much or cannot be as strong as doing it together. So I think that this was a very good example of that, and I appreciate everybody coming, and everybody have a good evening. Thank you.